I'm going for a bookish tradition today. I'm in the middle of at least 9 series at the moment, and I really want to go through them and do a series checkup to just see if I actually am on track to complete them, because I also really want to start some new series. So I hope that sounds interesting to you as well, and let's just get started. If you know my channel, then you'll probably already guess that I do want to do this in the form of a journal entry. So I'm just gonna go set up this very nice and easy series checkup spread that plans to collect all the series that I'm in the progress of or that I completed since starting my reading journal. And basically, I do have a series tracker in my journal, and probably you've seen it in one of my monthly checkup videos. But of course, that doesn't tell me how I'm doing over time. That just is a snapshot of the current moment and where I'm standing in that. So this checkup is meant to give me some more insight into how I get through my series, and I want to leave some space so that I can at some point do this again and see how it changed. Now, as I said already, I have 9 series currently in progress, and that might not sound like much, but I do read quite a bit less than the typical booktuber, so for me 9 series does feel like quite a lot. And I really want to go look at how I'm doing and why I'm not completing these series. So I'm gonna go through them in a few different chapters. I'm gonna start with the short series, and short is everything that is a maximum of 4 books. Then I'll go through the longer series that I'm reading, because fantasy and sci-fi tend to have way too long series sometimes. And then at the end I will mention the ones that I have already completed. And for each of them we'll have a look at what they're about and what I think of them, as well as my spreads on the books that I read this year that are part of these series. So let's get started. First up is the Locked Tomb trilogy, and I'm not quite sure, I think there might be a 4th book planned, but at the time when I was setting up my series tracker for it, there were only 3, so I'm gonna go with 3 for the moment. And that is a very interesting but quite a bit crazy science fantasy, and I did struggle a lot with the 2nd book. So in the Locked Tomb series, we move into a world that might be something in the very far future of our world, but it's not quite clear. And necromancers have taken over power. And there's 9 different houses of different types of necromancers, and they kind of have different planets and live there and do their things. And in the first book, we follow Gideon, and Gideon is a sword fighter, and she is quite funny, and it is quite an adventure to follow her around the ruins of this old planet that they go to, and that book was really fun to read. Then in the 2nd book we follow Harrow, who is the necromancer that belongs to Gideon, and Harrow has a lot of issues, and it is a really, really difficult book to read, I felt like. So it dragged on immensely. It was really well done in terms of, I think, the craftsmanship behind it, but I found it very hard to read and very hard to get through. So that was why I didn't continue on to the 3rd book right away. But I do want to still continue on, and I'm thinking that I might actually listen to the 3rd book, because that might help me get into it, and even if it drags on a little bit, that wouldn't be as bad. And I'm guessing that, again, it will be quite different than the ones before it, so I don't really know what to expect. But yeah, I've not quite given up on the series, so let's see if I can get around to listening to it at least. And I can already tell I'm rambling, so let's move on. The 2nd short series that I want to talk about is the Library series by Mark Lawrence. And that is a trilogy as well, and I've so far only read the 1st book. And back when I read that one, I was just getting back into reading more fantasy and longer books. And while I really liked the setup, and I also enjoyed the main characters, it did feel a bit lengthy, and that was why I didn't pick up the second book right away. And since then it just kind of fell under the radar for me. So it is kind of like an old series that I really should go back to. Next up, number 3 on my short series list is Hierarchy series by James Islington. And you've probably heard of that one. The first book in that series is The Will of the Many, and I've read that one and the second book as well. So I'm at 2 out of the 3 books, and I really enjoyed reading them. And I'm at the moment waiting for book 3. So basically I'm current with this series, and it is not too much in progress because I can't go any further than that at the moment. In these books you follow a young guy that basically had to run away and hide from his past, and he gets found and adopted by one of the more powerful people in their Roman-inspired society, and basically gets sent to a prestigious academy to learn how to become one of the next leaders. It is quite an interesting setting. It is very complex. It definitely has a lot of thought going into its world building. And the storyline had so many twists and turns that I really didn't see coming. So it is absolutely interesting to read. And I'm very excited to see where that series will still go. But I'll leave it at that for now. Next up on the short series, we do have a duology as well. And that one is Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. And basically she also wrote The Remnant Chronicles, which is a trilogy that I read quite a few years ago. And I really enjoyed that one and wanted to go back to this author at some point. So I'm really happy that I recently started Dance of Thieves, and I will soon finish this duology and read Vow of Thieves, the second part, because I already have it here and I'm excited to get that done, because this is a fun romantasy that is really easy to read and is just something nice for in between that is simple enough to follow but still does have an interesting storyline and not just a pure romance, which I don't like as much. So that is something that is quite recent and that I will finish very soon, I'm sure. And finally, the last short series that I want to put on this list is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. And this trilogy is something that I do want to finish, but that is so dark and grim to read that I don't always feel like I'm in the mood for this setting. So the writing is amazing, the character building is really, really well done, but I know that it will hurt my soul when I read it, and I mean that in a good way, but that also means that I need to be in a headspace where I can take that and I can work on it. And I'm currently not quite there, so I think it might still have to wait a bit longer until I get into a more chill headspace in general in my life right now. But that's okay, I still want to read it, but I will be waiting for the right time. And that's it for the short series already, so we can now move on and go over to longer series, which is everything that has 5 books or more that I'm currently reading. And actually there's 4 of them as well, which is more than I would have thought, but that makes sense, and now I know why I never finish any series. In any case, let's have a look at them, shall we? The first one on this list is my absolute favorite series at the moment, the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik. That is about the partnership between a dragon and his captain in an alternate history of the Napoleonic Wars in Europe. And basically each book is an adventure in itself, and so far each book has included some part of a journey. I've read 3 of the 9 books in this series, and now you might say that if I love this series so much, how come I haven't read more? Actually, I think it is such a nice series that I do want to give them some time to breathe, and I also don't want to be finished with it. So I'm not sure if you can understand that, but I really love going back to this lovely dragon and listening into their conversations that they have, and just watching them explore different continents and find out different things and talk about different things and just figure out their issues as well. So I really, really like this series, and I love coming back to it every 2 months or 3 months maybe, so that I can just let it sit a little bit in the background, think about the things that have happened, and then go back to it and just feel this amazing, love this series feeling again. So yeah, that is the Temeraire series. I've read the first book last year and the second and third book this year, and I already have the fourth book right here, and basically I'm planning to read that next month. But if you want to know more about what I'll be reading, then you should come back for my next video, because that's gonna be my reading plans so that I can get all of my reading challenges done as well. In any case, let's get back to the series and let's head over to the second longer series that I'm in the middle of, and that's the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. I'm currently just about to start the third little novella in this series, and it is just a really fun sci-fi novella series that is great for reading in between anything else, because the books so far have been really short, less than 100 pages, and the writing style is so much fun, and it just takes you along on the journey of this murderbot and him figuring out who he wants to be. So that is quite interesting, and I would be reading this a lot quicker if I didn't have to wait for 10 weeks or 15 weeks every single time that I want to get the next book from the library. So that is basically what keeps me slowed down for that series, but I will be continuing and making my way through it. The third longer series on my list is also a series that I started this year, and that is the Red Rising Saga by Pierce Brown. And I've only read the first book so far because I did really enjoy the setting, and I do still want to know more about it, but I didn't vibe that well with the main character, and that means that I am interested in continuing, but it wasn't my highest priority. But I will say that I have the next book in the series on my library hold waiting list, so I will soon continue. And if you haven't heard about this series, it's a sci-fi series in which we have moved to Mars as humans, and the society has split up in different levels, basically, with the golds being at the top and the reds being at the bottom. And our main character is one of the reds, and through some circumstances that are not his fault mostly, he gets drawn into a huge revolution and uprising, basically, and becomes one of the main characters for that. So it is quite interesting, as I said, in terms of the story, and I do hope that it gets better, but I've heard quite a lot of people say that it will, so I will be continuing, and I'll see for myself. And that already leads us to the last longer series that I've started this year, and that is the Dungeon Crawler Carl series by Matt Dinniman. I've just finished the second book out of the 8, and I'm a bit torn on this series. I've also watched quite a few people talk about the series very negatively, and I do understand their points, but I also kind of still want to continue, because I think this series is special in who it's written for and how you have to read it if you want to enjoy it, because it's a literary RPG. And that basically means that it feels a bit like playing a video game or watching a party play an RPG. And I will say that I would not want to play with this game master, because the humor is not really my thing. But I do like the storyline, and I do like the overall setup of how we got there and what is going on with the aliens. So I'm interested to see where it goes, and I think I will continue. But again, I won't have this as one of my priority series, and I'll just have it going on the side. In case you haven't heard about the series, basically it plays in a future where aliens invade the Earth and flatten down every building on the planet and open up a dungeon underneath the surface. And As a human that survived, you can decide whether you want to go in the dungeon and play in a huge dungeon crawler event that is televised throughout the galaxy, or whether you want to try and survive somehow on the surface of the Earth. In any case, our main protagonist, Carl, was trying to catch his girlfriend's cat at the moment, and that's why he was outside and thus wasn't killed, but he wasn't dressed for the cold weather, so he had to go in the dungeon, and then he ends up just being one of the people crawling this dungeon, and they learn about the aliens and what's going on, basically. As I said, the setting does sound quite interesting, but the humor is very much made for a bunch of guys playing video games, I feel like. Which is fine for me because I used to play quite a lot of video games with a lot of guys, so I can just kind of tune it out and be fine with it, but I do understand why people don't like it. Anyway, rant over. And that was also the last one of the longer series that I wanted to talk about. So now we can go ahead and look at the 2 series that I've completed. And I will say 2 series does feel like it's quite little, but anyways, I'm sure I will complete more until the end of the year, where we will definitely reevaluate this whole series tracker as well. So let's look at the series that I did complete. There was one that was an absolute 5-star masterwork, and that is the Shades of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab. And basically, if I have to summarize it in just one sentence, it is a really great setting of duplicate worlds that intersect in London with amazing characters that are diverse, that are realistic, that feel like they are different people having a crazy fun adventure. So I really enjoyed this trilogy, and I read book 2 and book 3 this year. And if you like higher fantasy with fun magic systems, with a setting that is a bit dark but not too dark, and lovely characters that you can actually really feel for and get involved in, then I think this is a trilogy that you should read. And I do know that V.E. Schwab has written more in the same world as well, so I think I do need to go and get into those books as well. But at the moment, because I'm already reading so many series, I think that I will wait a little bit longer and just get through a few different authors as well, because I like to read diversely and I think that's fun. And then finally we have one last duology, or maybe it's gonna actually be something longer, but at the moment that I'm talking about this, as far as I know, there's only 2 books in this series. And that is the Beatrice Steele mystery collection by Julia Seals. And those books are probably the only ones on this whole page, which is crazy, that are not fantasy or sci-fi, but that are rather historical mysteries. Although I will say that they're not very historically accurate, but rather a bit satirical and just meant to be fun. Our main character, Beatrice, is the daughter of an English family and is supposed to go find a husband and marry and be nice and behave, but instead she rather wants to solve murders. So in the first book, there is a murder happening at a great ball that she's at, and she has to help find the murderer. And that gets her so intrigued into this whole business that in the second book, she moves to London to actually become an inspector. And that, of course, is not as easy as it would sound. So it is very much fun to follow. It's not realistic, as I said, but it's a really fun read for in between that is just, you don't need to think about it too much and you can just enjoy it and go with it. But yeah, that's it. That's all the series that I read this year and that I'm in the middle of. And as you can see, there is still quite a lot to read, so I should definitely read more of those books. And as a very slight sneak peek as well, I'm currently listening to Feybound, which is also part of a series. So in this month's wrap-up, I will actually be adding a 10th series that I'm in the progress of. But that's still okay, I guess, so let's see how I continue on for the rest of this year. And as I said, I will definitely have another series checkup at the end of the year, especially when I get around to setting up a new reading journal, because then I will have to create my new series tracker and we'll see how big that has to be and how far ahead I've gotten in those series. But as you can see, I've also left some space on my checkup spread here so that I can continue on and compare my checkups with each other. So at the latest, sometime next year, I will definitely do another checkup as well and see how I've been doing. And also, if there's one of the series that I was talking about that you think I should definitely continue, or a series that you've read as well, please let me know your thoughts, because it's always great to be able to talk about these things. And I hope to see you in my next video, which will be coming quite soon, and which will be about my reading plans for September. So yeah, thank you for spending some time with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day and go read something nice. And maybe finish a series.